Welcome, everyone. I hope you can hear me. This stuff certainly takes a lot of setting up each time. So hopefully you can hear me. Welcome to another episode of Dreamiverse Deep Dive, where we are taking a look at very special treasures created in the Dreams engine, made on PlayStation. And yeah, it's been a while, right? It's been a while since we've last taken a dive. It's been interesting times. Whenever we would settle into the new normal, there was another piece of bad news surrounding Dreams. But we are still beavering away on our projects, and I'm still beavering away on my recent project. I know Camion, who's here as well, is also working on something, right, Camion?
Yeah, hello from my side too. I'm so thrilled for today. Really looking forward to this episode. I mean, it's been a really long time since our last episode, but it's great to come back in style with such a great game and such a great guest as we have today.
Totally, because unlike the two of us who are still working, we actually have a very special guest today who has managed to put out a fantastic game fairly recently. And so, a very, very warm welcome to somebody who shouldn't need any introduction because he's been doing amazing stuff in Dreams, but very, very, very heartfelt welcome to VectorSlinger. Hey, welcome to our special guest from Down Under.
Welcome, Craig.
Thank you. Thank you for having me for my second Dreamiverse Deep Dive episode.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, right, it's only taken us 6 episodes to circle back on the beginning, because some people might remember that we actually started this whole series with one of Craig's games, God's Lie, which actually, full disclosure, is one of my absolute favorite Dreams games of all time. And actually, I've been spending way more time on that I would like to admit. So, Craig, anything you want to say about yourself, maybe, or anything you would like to tell the audience about you, or about your work in Dreams, or about how you came to design stuff in Dreams?
Well, that's a very open-ended question. Well, I've always made things, just art, and I got into manga-style comic art back in the 90s, and I'm very interested in tabletop role-playing games, so systems and ways of representing stuff and doing things has always interested me, sort of crunching down on the mechanics of things. Just always had an interest in fantasy and science fiction and the combinations thereof. So Dreams was really good because, for everybody, it came along at the start of the pandemic when everyone was staying at home anyway.
Yeah, so true.
And it's, even though it doesn't have any like monetization for the things that you make in it, it's a really great hobby thing, which is basically what I do. I was doing hobby programming with like little bits of twine and trying to teach myself JavaScript even to try and make some games, which didn't get very far. But Dreams just sort of had everything that I wanted in one box. You could do the 3D sculpting and the audio, sort of setting up the audio environment for a game, and all the collaborative stuff. So it was really good for just making 3D environments I could run around and explore.
Yeah, I mean,
it's no secret that we are big VectorSlinger fans here.
Totally, yeah.
And I think just to maybe start off how I approach your games usually, or what I specifically like about them, and it's also true for the game we'll have a closer look at today, is that all your games feel extremely fresh. So in the sense that, well, let's say that there are some examples of really well-made and successful games on Dreams that are huge achievements in their own right. But they are clearly derivative of some well-established formula or known franchise that is then slightly altered. Still great attempts, still great content to enjoy. But what I really love about your games is that each time I pick it up, it was true for God's Lie, and it's also true for Ivy and Thorn today. There is something that really feels fresh, feels new. It's a kind of combination of elements I haven't seen before in that way, and it gives kind of a fresh take on something that one might think one knows, not to spoil enough, but too much. But just to make this a point, that's something that I think is really, really great about your work, and you touched upon it in your introduction to a certain extent, right? When you said that you are looking to express yourself and to look for ways to really put ideas out there that we might not have experienced in that way before, and I think that's something that's really magical about your work.
Yeah, well, one of the things I particularly like in games is just exploring. I spent 4 months to complete Elden Ring just because I was poking around everywhere trying to find all the places and how to get to the top of that one plateau that you see early on but you can't figure out how to get to until much later, sort of a thorn in my side. So yeah, I like exploring games. I like pushing boundaries of being able to move around. I mean, I'm not exactly a speed runner in the sense of breaking games to get through them, but yeah, just learning all the little secrets and finding places that are maybe a little more out of the way is big on me. And also I think maybe one of the ways that I design games is when I studied graphic design, one of the tricks or one of the tips I received was to try turning the problem on its head. And so I always try and see, I've got an idea, what happens if I turn the whole thing upside down? And I think that's maybe a little foreshadowing for today's game.
It's also, we're giving less away by saying that, but it's also like Michael said, it's a through line in your work, because I remember playing God's Life for the first time and expecting it to be this ponderous, meditative twist on Team Eco games, and then it turned out to be it has a lot of that ambience and a lot of that mood, but it's basically Team Eco by way of Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, it's basically a quick escape and running game, and I really realized that I took ages to get my head wrapped around that. And I remember even writing you well-meaning comments saying, yeah, this is kind of nice, but it needs to be slower and more ponderous. Yeah. And this is so fun in hindsight, because I completely missed the point actually. But it's fun to see that this is actually something that keeps cropping up in your work, because it's really like it feels cool and fresh and interesting to have expectations subverted that way and turned on their head. But yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'd say let's just dive in and take a look what we have prepared for you. Yeah. So before
maybe,
we get to
while you're booting up, in the sense of full disclosure, we can, I think, divulge that we also were playtesters on this game.
Absolutely. Right? And to give fair warning to you guys, like I said before, having played to this at least half a dozen times, my instinct will always be to try and ace it and play it as efficiently as possible. So I'm in the driver's seat today, so I'll make an effort to be nice and show things off, but not like min-max everything. But you have to rein me in if it gets a problem. Before we get to the main course, let me just show you this here, because this will still be around after the stream. This is our Dreamiverse Deep Dive collection, where we've collected all the great games and great creations from the previous episodes and from today's episode as well. There's God's Lie there at the beginning of the very first episode, so please do check that out as well. All of these other games are very definitely worth your time. Amazing stuff like Gemini Rising, Strain, all the last year's Dreamscom. Actually, we might be taking a peek inside in that one again for unspecified reasons. And this here is today's edition. It's Ivy and Thorn by VectorSlinger. And we'll be taking a look at that. But the collection will still be there for you to look at in the Dreamiverse and to play all of these amazing creations. And also, for those of you who might be watching this later as a VOD or on YouTube, this will be going up on YouTube as a way to keep this available and keep this online. So the series is really about exploring great games created in Dreams on PlayStation. And with that said, and with that preface out of the way, let's take a look at Ivy and Thorn. Once upon a time, a girl named Ivy awoke in a mysterious castle. With no idea how she came to this place and no savior in sight, Ivy sets forth to rescue herself. Let's take a look.
we start with that beautiful view of the castle we are about to explore. That's such a great way to start the game.
It looks like this really tight, imposing, well doctored intro screen montage. But we can assure you, like, that's the place, right? If you're playing the game and if you're diligently playing the game, you'll be going through every part of that very castle, and it's all there for you to explore. Craig, before we start the actual game, can you maybe tell us real quick what the starting point for this was? Like, what was how did you get the idea to create this in the first place?
Well, partly it was that Atticus poem at the start. She wasn't looking for a knight, she was looking for a sword. To have an idea for a princess to rescue herself. There's a sort of almost a genre or a group I've been seeing on social media of self-rescuing princess society. I've seen somewhere, and it's just about not needing a man to come and save you, but to be able to seize your own destiny and make your own way. So that's probably about all I got on that at the moment.
Excellent. And so we have a princess, we have a castle, but things do not play out quite as you might have expected beforehand. So let's just click on start here. I'll be honest with you. I'll be sticking with the default difficulty for combat. But for those of you with Dark Souls sensibilities, you are of course perfectly welcome to jack up the difficulty to your desires.
Maybe before you start, Stefan, just yes. One question, because I think it really fits nicely with this screen we are just seeing. I mean, it obviously is a huge place to explore, and managing something like that as a project in Dreams, of course, is kind of a challenge in itself, right? So while we are seeing this castle, I just wanted to quickly ask you, how did you go about drawing this out, designing this, coming up with the concept for this? Because obviously it's a really, really complex task you set out to do.
Yeah, well, I just started with a list of places that I wanted to have in it, and then started with a little sketch map of
right? Lava cave, ice prison, stuff like that.
I'm not that fond of ice levels personally. We don't get a lot of snow in Australia, or at least not where I am. So it was kind of, I guess the castle was developed kind of, what's the word? It was top down. I sort of said, this area is here, this area is here, they connect together like this. And so I made the whole castle, figured out where everything was on paper, and then I had to fill in all of the rooms. And there's a couple of places where, like, I've sort of just left places filled in a couple of obscure spots, but mostly you can go to every room in the castle. There's very few doors. Well, I don't think there's any doors that you can't open one way or another. Well, I guess the other thing was, talking about Dark Souls, that Dark Souls has that philosophy of if you can see the place, you can go there. That applies to Ivy and Thorn, at least as far as the castle goes. We're not supposed to be able to go to the distant scenery or check out other parts of the world, but pretty much everywhere in the castle is somewhere that you can go. And as you were saying about it being a very large area and difficult to manage in Dreams, I did have to slice it up, obviously, into a number of different scenes, but I ended up, we'll probably see the transitions a little later, but everything's put together in a consistent manner, so there's no trickery as far as the placement of scenes and rooms and stuff. Because of the way I connected things, I had to have everything precisely lined up, which means that if you can see that there's a place for a room to be, there will be something there.
I mean, just as it's zooming by in the distance, let me quickly point out that that tower in the distance, that lighthouse, pharaohs stuff you can see in the distance. Off the distance, I'm still holding out hope for that becoming a DLC level at one point. But anyway,
always room for a sequel.
Yeah, always room for a sequel. Speaking to the realization of the place, like I've talked before on stream about how much of a thing I had for sense of place in games, and this really, as we will be seeing just now, is basically sense of place, the game, because it actually all comes together in a way that makes sense.
Yeah,
so now we have the outside perspective, and we go in.
Beauty such as thine must be protected.
There we are.
That's our
Such a
girl.
nice way to really set the scene with minimal introduction. I mean, we made a little more of an introduction to start here because we really want to also cover the creating angle behind it, right? So really dive into how this was made in Dreams as a creative platform and the thoughts behind it. But I really love that you really put the player right in there, right in Ivy's shoes. And now it's upon us to figure out what's actually going on there.
So we wake up as this really she's like the image of a classic Disney princess, right, with this huge cumbersome dress. So this is really hard to move around in this beautifully appointed bedroom. So where to go from here? Let's see where we are. So as we just said, right, this is basically the opposite image to what we've seen before. Like we had this huge overview of the castle, and now we're actually within the place, and we can get an even better idea of how massive everything is. Like all these buildings, all these different parts of the castle that we can already see up from here. And like I said, like we will be, if you're diligent enough, you'll be going along each of those ramparts, through each of those towers. So this is really, it's a huge place. So let's see.
What this game does really, really nicely, and this is something I want to point out because you need to feel it, to experience it, to actually get the gist of it. But just telling you now, when you're first playing Ivy here, in this huge pompous kind of dress, it feels so sluggish. You kind of feel like you can barely move in it. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I want to get rid of this. It's kind of the first feeling you get, right? So, and the game does such a nice job in making this the feeling you have. And again, we spoke about this earlier when we talked about God's Lie, right? So you might say, oh no, I'm not into this kind of game. It's basically a walking simulator where you just walk really slowly and it's sluggish. But this is absolutely on purpose. And you want to get rid of this dress. It's not told to the player, but you have the feeling in you because you managed to convey this by the gameplay itself. I really love that.
It took me a lot of tweaking to get the dress feeling that bad. But also I made sure to sort of flag that when the first thing Ivy does when you start moving is tell you that the dress is horrible, that she doesn't like it either. So you can tell.
So to hint at the fact that there might be a time in the game where you actually get rid of that, right? So let's see. The only thing we can do is go through this door.
Good day, my lady.
Oh no.
And you know what? Let me get this out of the way. I love these guys. Like they are so friendly and trying to be helpful and so dogged in their, like, it's no big giveaway to say that at some point you might end up fighting these guys who are all over the castle. And I like it. It never stopped feeling bad because they're so like apologetic about it, and they really only want to be good servants and keep you safe. And this is. And this is you voiced them, Craig, right? Yeah,
that was one of the, well, I think their voices were the first voices I put in the game. I didn't put the Knight's voice or Ivy's voice or any of the other ones in until much later on. But so because they were so, the guards are so tied up in the mechanics of how I wanted the game to work in the first place, because it's whether they let you past or whether they try to fight you. Whether they try to take you back to your room, which we might see later. All of that was kind of part of the basic mechanics and the basic concept of what I had in mind to start with. So having them doing their thing the right way was one of the first things I tried to get right.
Oh, look, I just said
when we were preparing the stream, sorry, Stefan.
No problem.
The stream, it was like we were talking a little bit about your inspiration, how you approached the design process. And you said that you basically started with the gameplay, and you like to start with gameplay elements. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that in regard to this game. So what was your core idea of the gameplay, and which kind of elements did you have in mind when you started designing this?
So I thought it would be fun to have, I don't know if this is giving too much away about the way that the guards work at the moment, but there we go. So I had in mind having a princess with a long dress trying to escape the castle, and I liked the idea of you could have a long dress, or you could maybe, well, I think Stefan could probably go and give an example of the shorter dress.
I'll do that. I just wanted to show off one little thing, because this is also a really cool mechanic in the game. Like, personally, I'm a huge fan of voice logs in explorable places. So this is Ivy and Thorn's version of the voice logs. Like, if you explore the castle, you have all these messages lying around. Now, the thing is that the whole thing is very subdued in its storytelling. So if you really want to get an idea of what's going on here and what the history of the place is and what took place there, you will want to search these out, because they are really like it's personally, I think it's a masterclass in understated storytelling, in that it really puts together a picture of what happened at the place, who the inhabitants were, and so you really want to. Even if you're not a completionist, you will want to check out as many of these as you can possibly find, because it really makes the place feel more interesting and more alive, and you get a better idea of what happened. And the other thing, and then I'll let you guys keep talking. No, let's show off two important things. This is the one really, really important thing, because you have these pairs of scissors lying around, and if you pick them up, this happens.
Camera clips through the wall.
Yeah, the camera cuts through the wall. No matter. But here, look at this, free at last. Now Ivy is actually placed the way you would expect a protagonist in such a game to play, and now she's far more mobile. She can jump. And the other thing that's a huge mechanic in the game, and that I want to point out to you, is that there's all kinds of secrets here, like you would expect in a big old castle. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of secrets and of hidden passages. And for example, you have the one right here.
I'll give you this one for free.
Yeah, we give you this one for free, because it's really the start of the game.
Rest assured, there are many more to find, even in this first introductory area. So,
and I can say this from painful experience. Like, there is a solution to all of them. Like, there were some that I couldn't find for hours and hours and hours, and there's always a solution. And better yet, the solution often makes sense, or always makes sense if you think about it in hindsight, right? So basically,
first shortcut unlocked.
Yeah, now we've created this really nice shortcut, and we can go from there in a minute. But this is something that Craig alluded to a moment ago, because now I'm going to show you another really great mechanic that I think quite a few players haven't realized is a mechanic at all. Like, let me just. This is bound to be embarrassing, but no, looking pretty good so far. All right, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Look what we have here. There's another dress here.
So there's kind of like two main settings for Ivy, is whether the dress is long or short, and whether she has a sword or not. So the guards will respond differently depending on what combination of those things you have on you at the time.
And even in the cumbersome version of the dress, we can already see that it's way more mobile than you were in the white dress, right? You can even if you have the full dress on, you can jump, which hugely enhances
blending
mobility.
keyframe settings.
And it's a great way of actually kind of introducing a soft RPG mechanic of you basically determining your own build of your character to a certain extent. So the dress you wear, I think we don't spoil anything when we say there are more than just two dresses in this game. So, and every dress has
room in the cupboard.
Yeah. So every dress has specific advantages and is kind of lends itself to specific play styles. And I really love that so much about this game. It really gives you the opportunity to play it in a way that you want to play it. And there are many different routes to go, not only in regard to the actual places you can go and the secrets and so on, but also in how to approach the game itself, gameplay-wise. I mean, even when Stefan was earlier talking about all the little tidbits in regard to the story, it's great to read them. I recommend to read them. They add a lot to the atmosphere and the story and the lore. But you could play the game without reading a single one of them. And that is such a great approach to game design. I really have to commend you on that. And maybe just to bring that back to my earlier question in regard to what kinds of elements you had in mind. So how did you fit all of this together? And what was your core approach to that?
So I wonder if I can just... Ooh, look.
Fit all of which together? Just the game in general.
And
the different
play
mechanics you had in
styles.
mind. You started talking about the princess having this dress and working with that dress as a kind of a gameplay style element. So what else came to the equation that made the game?
Well, the combination of those things. The combination of those things, I guess. That I kind of like the way that the interaction of simple systems can create more complex outcomes. So, yeah, I'm drawing a blank.
So one thing that I really like is...
Look what I found.
Now you're giving away secret after secret.
Yes, I'm giving away secret, but we said the opening area was fair game. And I need to give this away because I wanted to show how beautifully it all interlocks again, because obviously this leads back to another area where we couldn't advance before. And
so with the, I guess one of the main sort of ideas I had to start with was careful.
Yeah, I like killing myself in this area. So
I would have died 10 times by now. So
I did put a thing in where if you stop climbing, nearly slipped. I did put a thing in where if you, when you get to the bottom of a thing and she automatically comes off the ivy or the ladder, that the speed drops to 0 for a brief second, so you don't just automatically walk straight off the edge. But you still got to be a bit careful.
And see, this is like, sorry, Craig, just real quick. This is like, I think, a great example of what Michael was talking about, because this room it's really just there to round out the experience. Like, it makes sense in the placement of the castle. You have this note that you can find on the table here that seems to have been written by somebody who was in the same predicament you are in. And you have to find the key so you can unlock this. This was the key we just found at the top of the castle. But basically, this is totally optional. Like, you could have just made a beeline to the exit of the area. There's
you can
all
also
kinds
just
of
climb in through the window and then back out
just
again.
climb out again, right?
Through the window.
Yeah.
I tried when I was designing the layout. I tried to have at least 2 ways to get to most places. So there's usually at least 2 exits, or possibly 3 exits from any one area into a new area.
Also, it's so much fun figuring that out. I mean, I remember when I first played the game, one thing I tried is, can I reach certain places just by climbing the outside? And it's possible in so many cases. It's crazy. And I really like that.
I don't like having invisible walls if I don't absolutely need to have them.
I'm totally not spoiling anything or suggesting anything by pointing the camera this way, right? But if you basically, as Craig said before, if you can see it, then you can basically, there's a fair chance that you will be able to get there. Also, one small detail that I wanted to point you to, because this is really lovely. This was, I think, added fairly late during development, but you have this little sewing space here, right? With all kinds of different rolls of yarn, and this is so cool because this has this little place that tells you a little story of what might have taken place here, but it also hints at some of the game's contents. Like it hints at some of the builds and some of the different options you will have later on. So let's see. We don't want to add all those guys.
Well, they don't know what's going to happen yet. The people watching don't know what's going to happen.
Let's see which. Oh no, I can't go there.
while Stefan is finding his way,
And I don't want to
maybe
give
just
the
coming-
other. I don't want to give the other thing away, so I'll just try this.
Oh.
I think.
Okay.
As we
well,
heard,
good
there are
luck.
at least 3 ways to go about this. So
Yeah, this
you'll
is
see
the
Yeah,
the
hard
see.
way.
Okay, so we've shown off another mechanic. So you can die, obviously, and if you die, well, maybe this is not it's
You
all
don't
for the
die.
best.
The
but I've
magic
shown
of the castle protects you.
Right, the magic of the castle protects you and takes you back to the bedroom, and so it's
And
really
makes your dress
important
long again.
and really crucial. That's important, right? That you, whenever you wake up after dying, respawning back in a bedroom, you always have the long dress again. So if you want to become mobile again, you will have to go back to the nearest pair of scissors, and so it's
I
really
think I
like.
remember earlier on in playtesting, you guys, I think, were pretty big on just cutting the skirt as soon as possible
Yeah.
and running around with a short skirt all the time.
No,
Which-
see,
No!
now I'm doing it. I'm doing it all wrong.
But it's such a great way of also building tension, right? So, and we were talking a little bit about the inspiration for this game in the beginning, and you talked a little bit about your approach to the gameplay, Craig. I think that's where the Demon Souls influence clearly shows,
Yeah.
right? So it's about
Yeah.
you explore, and if you fail, there is a penalty to it. And the penalty in this case is you are sent back to basically the last checkpoint, and you need to get rid of your dress or the long dress again. And this kind of really puts you in the spot where you are really like, when you're doing these jumps, you really feel like, okay, I really need to do this right now because I don't want to go back. And of course, it escalates later on in the game because the distances between the spawn points and the exploration you do from there will get bigger. And this is something I think that really speaks to the game design here, because it's a nice way of putting up stakes for the player, right?
And so here's the guy who blocked me off from the other side, right? So I've now snuck up behind him. That's not the only way. There would have been an even better one, but I'll let the players discover that for themselves. But now I have to go all Metal Gear Solid on him. So.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm in the clear. So there is an angle of stealth to the game as well, and though it's
There can
like
be.
it's. And like as you said, Craig, when we playtested this, the impetus on our side was always to get rid of the dress as soon as possible and to become as mobile as possible. But as we'll be seeing in a minute, like that isn't always the best option, right? Because it can also make sense to keep the dress long in places. So let's.
Yes, well, we haven't given away why you might not want to have a short dress yet, but yeah, what was I going to talk about?
Also, I love the lighting in here. Just.
Yeah, that's just the sun.
Maybe that's a general point to highlight. Can you walk us a little bit through how many of these assets we see did you do on your own, yourself, in Dreams, creating it from scratch?
Well, Ivy and the guards. I think Ivy was based on a puppet I made ages ago. And I did all the architecture, basically. All the floors, the pillars, the windows and lattices, and the walls and arches. I've got a bit of a thing for Gothic architecture, so it took me a while to figure out how to do it precisely in Dreams, because it can be a little hard wrestling with the grid occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
It's good if you want to do things a little bit messy and sort of, and that can be a good look too, but I just happen to have a thing for precision, and I know how Gothic arches are put together quite precisely, geometrically speaking. So yeah, I did that. Most of the furniture is
Like
borrowed
having
from
done
other
this,
people.
having done this on the grid. Oh God, I can see, I can basically see it and imagine it. But like my heart goes out to anyone who's doing that kind of precision work using the grid. I cannot, like, for the life of me, figure it out.
But that being
It can
said,
be a
and
bit
that was actually
frustrating.
what I was driving at, is you did this mainly, at least as far as the architecture is concerned, the character is concerned, from scratch in Dreams. And I think it
Yep.
speaks to the power of this game engine and to the power of helping you to realize an idea, a dream that you have in mind in a rather short period of time. I mean, you can talk a little bit about how long you spent developing this game, but I say in development cycles of games, of indie games, it's really fast and really flexible, and I love that so much. And I'd love you to elaborate maybe a little bit more on that, how you use Dreams as a platform.
I think I put together the architecture pack a while ago, just sort of built it because I wanted to make things like that. So that was kind of pre-done, but as far as Ivy and Thorn goes, from sort of concept and starting to do prototyping up until release, was about a year, but I took about 5 months off to do other stuff in the middle of that, so it only really took 7 months to make the whole game.
It is a fully realized game with a bunch of mechanics and, as I said, truly beautiful setting.
One thing I wanted to say is, as we were talking before about how it's feels like a real location, that was one of my sort of design goals or precepts, I guess, was to make the place feel like a real place first and a game level second. And the gameplay does suffer a little bit because of that, but the aesthetic, I think, benefits greatly.
Yeah, and it actually, like, it's a really complicated place, but the fact that it's interconnected and that actually it makes sense, the way it's lined up makes sense, actually helps in the long run, because it actually you can actually build an interior map of the place in your mind. That helps you
or
navigate,
on grid
right?
paper if you want to. It helps.
Yeah, or go back to the old graph paper solution.
Yeah.
So this is
so we talked. Sorry, if I can drive this home. I really like this because it really helps in this situation. So we spoke about influences from the Souls games. We talk about Metal Gear Solid. You can also sneak, right? And what you just said is there is also elements of a puzzle game in it, right? So and the kind of environmental consistency really helps with that, because there are points in this game where you're really standing in a room and you say there must be an empty space behind this wall. From the layout, there must be something there, and then it's so nice to figure out how to get there. Yeah. And this kind of is something that is really another mechanic in the game that I really love, and that is really something that the way the consistent feeling of place here is established really helps to drive home.
Also, let me just show off the real quick, because this is another important mechanic of the game. Like, you have these bedrooms scattered all over the castle, and if you sleep in the beds, not only does that heal you for reasons like you might want to get healed at some point for reasons that shall remain undisclosed for now, but it also turns this bed into a respawn point, right? Into a save point of sorts. So if I die now, or get captured, I won't boot back up to the gilded cage, but I'll be returned to this bed here. So it really makes sense to manage that and to keep in mind as you're progressing through the castle that you try to create respawn points near to your locations. Or you can also say, I'm keeping a respawn point half a castle away, just to be able to go back there quickly if the need arises. But it really makes sense to keep that in mind, that these actually not only serve as healing points but also as respawn points.
There's a respawn option in the menu in case anybody gets stuck.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, right? Also, the menu. This is also important to line out, because people often don't realize that there is a menu, and the menu features the respawn point. You can change difficulties, and it also has a tally of the nodes you've found or not found in the area. It also has a running timer, and it also shows you the keys or the items that you have found. So this can become a huge help, trying you to get a better grip on the place. And so now I talked a minute ago about how it makes sense to sometimes makes sense to keep the dress long. You see why in a minute. So I just...
Lady, your dress is damaged. Allow me to escort you to your chamber.
So this is something that will happen to you a lot in the beginning, right? The robot guards catch you, and then you get put back to the bed.
And it's really great that for a total coincidence, you lighted this campfire, so to speak. this
total coincidence.
So otherwise, we would have been teleported back right to the Gilded Cage, the starting point, right? So
once you've opened up the
might
place,
be rescuing herself, but she isn't the sort of princess who turns beds into bonfires.
But that is like if you've opened up the place and if you've unlocked doors and created shortcuts and everything, you'll never lose massive amounts of progress. Like it'll mostly take a few minutes of running around.
Even if you do end up back halfway across the castle accidentally, you've probably figured out how to get where you had gotten to. So it's a bit easier to get back there the next time. You're not sort of poking around corners quite as cautiously.
But see, the guy who would capture me with a short dress is now all friendly. He just won't let me through those double doors. So there's a payoff. But I can now pass along this passage unbothered.
To start with, I was like, I really don't want to put in spiral stairs, because especially long ones. Because
it's a mess with the camera, right?
Yeah. It can be a bit of a mess, and it just turns into it's visually a bit disturbing, and maybe make you dizzy. But in the end, they do turn out to be the most space efficient way to go up and down, unless you want to use elevators, which that's very Dark Souls. But
and see, this is where I wanted to go, because this is the rooftop we just saw from the other side. And look, there's the Gilded Cage. Like over there's the balcony you started on with the ivy, right? And so you can basically see our passage here.
You can see the walkway that you passed through to get into the keep, just down there.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's where we went into the upper keep. And we were up there looking down here. So this is really what we were talking about when we were talking about the whole place being interconnected and working together and being laid out in a way that really makes sense, because it's really like, even if it's cut up into different scenes, it actually creates the feling of it all being one big place. And this is something like I'm living for stuff like that. And also you can get another nice look at future areas if you're screwing around with the camera.
Figure out where you need to get out of the castle from there.
There's also, I think, there's this skipping to the wall there. There's also this nice, I think, sense of the castle having different layers, or also vertical layers, right? Because you can also already guess that these are all different vertical layers of the castle. You have the front gate, which is far off in the distance, and then higher and higher, like almost in a little terrace style. And then you're up here, and you will need to get down there somehow.
Yeah, once you get inside the keep, it's harder to keep track of where you are, because it's all just stuck inside, and it's just one room.
Oh, if you can go back for a second, Stefan, that's something that I want to add. Because just as Craig said this, if you go to the keep, it might be a little harder to find orientation. And when I played the game for the first time, and I sent the clip of me playing the game for the first time to Craig as a kind of, look, this is how I, as a kind of, let's say, example, approached the game for the first time. I got literally lost when I entered the keep, because there were so many different ways to go, so many different options, and I usually like to approach games really analytically. So I like to map out, okay, this way goes there, let's go back, let's check the other way. So just to make sure that I get a kind of map of the area. And it got so convoluted at a point that I got really lost. And at first, this might be a little frustrating to players who come there, but I assure you, it is something that is really nice to figure out, because there are these moments in the game where you come to a point and you say, oh, I've been here before. I just was approaching it from the other direction, or there is a door that opens up, and then you see how things are connected and fit together, and you have this eureka moment of saying, okay, all the confusion is gone now, because now I know how this connects, and this is so nicely done, and it's really rewarding. What I wanted to point out is exactly where you're standing now. You kind of guessed what I wanted to show. There is this courtyard down there, right?
Yeah.
And this is a point where everything really clicked for me when I played it the first time, because you go to this courtyard, and it is kind of a hub to many, let's say, wings the castle has. And that was when I found out, okay, now I'm here, and now I can basically map back. There is this wing to the south, this wing to the north, and so on, and it really fell into place. And I can't really highlight enough what a great feeling that was. And we talked about this earlier, about the game deliberately kind of being maybe a little hard, a little confusing, a little tough in general. But it is, and you can talk about this, Craig, maybe a little more. I suspect it is by design. At least I can say from a player perspective, it makes for this kind of experience of progress, experience of revelation of certain routes and so on. That is really, really nice to have. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I wanted to give people sort of, the castle is very porous. It has a lot of holes through it, even though it looks like a defensive structure. So because there's so many routes you can take to get places and so many different ways you can get places, I wanted, and also, so I didn't want it to be super hard to get places, but I wanted people to feel like, I guess, clever for figuring out how to get somewhere. So there are obstacles in the way that you'll have to figure out, or environments you'll have to navigate, and rooms and that you'll have to figure out where they go. But yeah, exploring virtual environments and building a little map in my head is one of my favorite activities. So this is basically that, the game. It's
And how frustrating was it to watch me getting lost when you knew exactly where exactly I had to go?
Well, that's fine. And I did appreciate the moment when you did pop out at a particular place and went, oh, I'm back here again. Okay, so now I understand how it loops around. Yeah, and I did end up like locking one of these doors around here so that it would shut off one of the potential routes to cut down on the potential overwhelm, at least at this point. But it does really open up once you get to the keep. And there's a lot more.
But you know what's fun is that because Michael talked about earlier about being able to play this in very different ways, and I am not at all like an analytical type when it comes to mapping out spaces, right? I have the attention span of a very small bird that has been badly concussed. And so I didn't do that, and I didn't try to put together a map in my head. I just played it in a stream of consciousness style, like floating from location to location. And the fun thing is that also works. Like there's always a place to go. There's always somewhere else that connects to it. And so you can also, even if you are not very good at mapping out places and you're not very good at putting together all the pieces in your head, you can still get a sense of the place because there's a great sense of flow to it where you can always go somewhere from where you are currently. Also, I'm giving away one more secret just to touch upon something that we talked about earlier. If you pay close attention to your environment, you actually do realize that there are things that stick out. And one of the telltale things is these little grooves right here. So if you do this...
Whoa, no!
Should have done this with the short dress, right?
Yeah,
oh, no!
Oh, no.
I broke it. Oh, no, I broke it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Wait, let me just...
You have a... When you have the...
Oh, I have the respawn
You'll have to
point,
respawn.
Right? I have the respawn point. See, that's live TV, ladies and gentlemen.
And I can say this never happened to me once when playing the game for
me
hours and
neither.
hours, and we do a stream where we want to put out how great this game is and how polished it is, which it really is.
The long dress has a slightly wider collision capsule, so it must have just got caught.
And this also, like, I'm so sorry, this normally wouldn't even have become an issue because without the blue dress, I wouldn't have been able to jump that high. But wait, there's some scissors here, right? So I can just show that again.
There's one other dress you could actually do that jump with, I think. But yeah, most of the dresses you would need to have it short before you can make the jump in the first place.
So
this points to something again that's really nice about this game. The elements you put in place in regard to long dress, short dress, different kinds of dresses, and the way you move, other gameplay elements that might come in later. They are simple on their own, but the way they combine is really interesting. So there was one place earlier also where we were in the full dress, but there was kind of a ladder in the background. And then you realize, okay, I came here, I snuck past, or the guard left me past him because otherwise he would have caught me. But now I can't go on because my dress is long. So is there a way to get here with a short dress is the next question you ask yourself. And then you look for a solution for that. And that's so nice because it drives you on and on and on and find these little cues and use the gameplay mechanics in different ways to achieve new goals and reach new places.
And it escalates the problem, right?
Yeah, it's one of the sort of things. I came up with a big list of like logic puzzles involving the dress and the sword and where guards are standing.
Wait, there is a sword?
Oh no! So that difficulty setting for fights, that difficulty for fights actually does have a function.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Craig. So you came up with different ways of little puzzles involving these elements?
Yeah, I mean, the basic sort of idea is you can get in some places with a long dress, but you can't get to all the places with a long dress because you need the short dress for climbing or fitting through small gaps sometimes. So, yeah, you need to figure out, how do I unlock this thing? How do I get around behind this guard so that I can climb this thing without them catching me and getting me back to the room? And I just tried to sort of use different variations of that throughout the castle, in different ways to create different little puzzles. It's not a super tight design, I wouldn't say, but I tried to give it a bit of variety.
I also like how it creates this feeling of growing empowerment throughout the game, because you start out barely being able to figure out your way around the place. Then you get caught. Then you discover that you can cut short your dress. Then you get caught. Then you realize that you will need to manage that and have the dress long some of the time. And then as the place opens up and you open up routes and shortcuts and discover more items, you actually can start to run rings around the guards, and your mastery of the place, so to speak, becomes bigger and bigger, and you really have the sense that this is really turning into your place now, that you have a certain amount of control of. This leads down to the rest of the upper keep. I don't want to spoil any more of this content actually, but we'll give you a small teaser for the bigger game, because Craig was awesome enough to give me a little, let's see where it is, to give me a little scene. What happens here? What happened here? Why is it looking that way?
While you're figuring this out, I can say a little bit about,
all right.
just as a kind of teaser for people who want to play this. So what we showed right now is just a really, really small portion of the game. And what Stefan is bringing up now is another portion, but rest assured, even if we show this stuff right now, there is so much more to explore. There are so many different areas in this castle, each with its own kind of atmosphere and vibe, and that's something that's really so much fun to explore. And if there's one word that I could basically choose in regard to describe how this game is designed, it's elegance, because it's elegant in the way it presents its story. It's never in your face. It's never like obvious or going for something that's right there in front of you. It's making you think, but in ways where you think, well, there is some really nice idea behind this. There is some thought behind this, and it also speaks to the way the story is developed that Stefan mentioned earlier in regard to, this is a story about empowerment. But it doesn't put this right in your face. It is a very elegant, subdued way of bringing this across without you basically feeling like this is something that is brought upon me or forced upon me. It's something you explore bit by bit, and this makes it all the more powerful to experience.
And look, we're back to the white dress, but we're in a different place now. This is the Grand Hall, and we really wanted to show this off because it's like, it's basically an incredible encapsulation of the game's aesthetics. It's also, I think, the place where the whole thing goes full on Castlevania for a moment, because you have this very Symphony of the Night style music playing in the background, and also there's something mysterious going on here. Like this really felt, when I first saw this place, this really felt so very Castlevania to me, because you have this eerie, ghostly dress dancing around there on the dance floor. Now, we won't spoil what that is, or what the story behind that is. You can figure it out, and you can actually find out if you play this. But I think for now, suffice to just take in this beautiful, beautiful space with the sun streaming in through the windows.
What is beautiful is, I think this is the first time in the game, maybe the only time in the game, where you hear music played in the background. And if you're wondering if this is, as Craig earlier mentioned, grounded in the world, it's a nice way to find out where the music is coming from. So it's really nice, because all these small pieces fit together, and everything in the game and in the world it presents really is grounded. It makes sense, and we can't stress this enough. It's such an achievement.
And then again, there's so much of this is there for you to discover or to ignore. Like, you can also, if you want to keep this a secret for yourself, what's happening here, who that character is or isn't, you can totally ignore that. Yeah? You can just say, I saw a dancing dress after an hour or so. I don't know what that was all about.
And noped out to nope, not
and noped out, right.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for a long time about the story behind the game, but unlike as I said before, the castle kind of had a top-down construction. I kind of figured out where I wanted stuff to be and then worked down to the details. Whereas if I'd done it the other way around, I could have sort of focused on little puzzle vignettes and assembled those into a whole. But yeah, the story kind of emerged a little differently. That kind of grew from the ground up, just from context and little ideas popping up here and there, and then all sort of coming together in the end to make something bigger. But yeah, I won't spoil the story, only to say that it is, as you said, very much a game about empowerment, and also it's basically turning your traditional fairy tale story inside out.
And like, I won't spoil the story either for obvious reasons. I just want to point out two things about it. One thing is, because I think this is something players should know, that there are actually two endings to the story, right? Two different ways to escape the castle, which I won't spoil. I'll just say what I really loved is the fact that both of those options feel completely in tune with Ivy's character and with what the game is trying to say. Like, there are different ways of escaping the castle. See, you can also here make a little shortcut. There are different ways of escaping the castle and different ways of bringing closure to the story, but both of them are completely, feel fully thought out in that they both match the themes of the game and the theme of the character really well, I'd say.
There's actually 3 ways.
Oh yeah, you keep talking about that, and that makes me realize that I've only discovered 2 of them so far.
It doesn't do much different to you're leaving by the same
I remember,
area,
but I remember somebody talking about that in the comments, right, to the game, and I've kept wondering how that works, and I've still to discover it myself, actually. But seeing how I've actually started a new playthrough with this for this stream, I might as well go the whole hog and finally discover it. So yeah, this is the grand hall, and like take it in again. This beautifully realized architecture. Also, adding to the subject of the Gothic architecture, let me just point out that all of these building blocks that the castle was assembled from are actually remixable on the Dreamiverse. So if you want to go on your own Gothic building spree, Craig has kindly made all of these remixable and usable for you, and I've put them in the collection.
It's easier just to make everything public.
Yeah, but it's also great community service in that it's a great and versatile kit. And like, I remember your God Sly architecture turning out in many fantasy games all over the Dreamiverse.
Yeah, the statue of the lady in white that's all over this castle.
Actually,
that was one of the first sculpts I made. It's based on the same character model as Ivy. I just popped the sculpt out of the puppet. way back when I was first doing stuff in Dreams, and made that as a sort of Bloodborne-inspired piece of statuary, and it's gone off. Everybody seems to like it.
And would you believe that I came this close to actually also using it in my latest project? It was a close call. It was a close call. It ended up
just on the right there in the gallery.
Oh, right, yeah. Let's see. This one, right? Because this is actually it keeps showing up all over the Dreamiverse actually.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, so if somebody wants to build their own Gothic castle, you totally can, because I wonder what this is. Because you can totally go in there and use that collection, use those assets for your own project, and they are really all that work that has gone into them could also benefit your project.
Maybe to round off this part of our stream, few more questions for you, Craig. So, if people first pick up this game, is there something you would like to tell them for their first experience, or would you like to for them to go in completely without anything of that? So, is there something you would like to give people on their way to explore this game?
Well, explore would be the word. Just to find your own way. A lot of games will sort of hold your hand and tell you which way to go and what you need to do. And Ivy and Thorn isn't one of those games. It only tells you that you should try and find a way out of the castle. How you do that is up to you. There's various, as we've seen, the different dresses have different abilities, and there are many different secrets. You don't need to discover all of the secrets, although you can. But the important thing is to find your own path. And that's also something that I like to do in my games, is to forget what I was talking about. I like to give you the option to do things your way. That's not exactly what I meant.
But I think, I remember when we talked about this during the playtesting stage, that we would sometimes.
I remember what I meant to say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things I like is emergent gameplay, where you will just come across a scene or something that's maybe a little unexpected. I don't like to sort of force cutscenes on everything, but just to let you experience it through your own eyes as you see it. So you might miss stuff, but I like the emergent experience. Like I saw a playthrough that Camian did, and discovering the Grand Hall here was sort of revelatory, as far as, wow, this is amazing to look at. And so that's sort of just discovering it on your own and experiencing it on your own terms, I think, is quite important. And one of the things I like in games is, finding your own way, in the sense that you play the game and you go through it a certain way, and that's your experience. So that's the story that you've told with the game. And Ivy and Thorn gives you a lot of different ways you can do it. You don't have to do everything. You can just find a way, and that's your way, and that tells your story of the game.
You said that you're coming from also a role-playing background, and it definitely shows in the freedom you give to the player to explore and to make it their own experience.
Yeah, as a role player, I'm very big on, as a GM, a game master, I'm very big on setting up situations and seeing how they unfold. I don't like telling stories where I know what's going to happen. So it's important to give the players the freedom to do things the way they want to, I think.
And it's
Is
really
there a point where you surprised yourself? I mean, you're playing your own creation, where you tried something that you actually didn't account for or you didn't plan, but you could do
Finding
it.
The third way out of the castle was one of them.
So the third way actually wasn't planned. It's a coincidence,
No,
but a happy little coincidence that you
It was just
kept.
something discovered during testing. I thought, I wonder if it's possible to do this, and it was. Yeah, it's a little tricky. I should.
But that's so great to hear. I mean, it's the pinnacle of emergent gameplay if you as a creator are surprised by your own creation at a certain point. I think that's such a nice little story.
Yeah,
I also
I do like. Ivy and Thorn doesn't have a lot of like procedurally generated content or anything like that. I have experimented with like a random dungeon generator as well, but yeah, everything in Ivy and Thorn is pretty much curated content. It's all there deliberately, which means there's not really any surprises for me, other than when I discover that I can actually get to a place that I didn't think didn't really intend for people to get to. But again, I don't necessarily intend for people to do a thing. So I've allowed for people to climb around on the walls outside the castle if they're good enough not to slip. You should be able to anyway. Take pretty much any route you can find, and I try not to get in the way of that.
And even so, I like that there's usually a payoff for it. Like something I personally don't like is if games let you explore and take you different and super difficult routes to reach a point, and then have nothing there. And by nothing, I don't necessarily mean an item or an upgrade or a story content or whatever, but at least a nice view. Like I think that should be the absolute bare minimum. That you at least get a fun perspective on the world or a great vista or something like that. And on that count, I would say Ivy and Thorn never disappoints, because even if you take the trouble of really jumping around outside the castle and really climbing as high as you can climb, there's always something there, even if that something is just a stunning new vista to be discovered.
Yeah, I tried to make the landscape reasonably interesting from a distance.
So as for the actual retail version of the game, I think that's where we leave this, because we don't want to give too much away, except to say that please do take your time when playing this, because it really it opens up it gets more and more interesting.
Oh, one piece of advice actually I would give to new players is to go fairly slowly and pay attention to your surroundings, because
definitely.
I've seen a lot of streamers just run around as fast as possible past things and glance into corners and miss stuff. They just go straight past all of the secret doors.
This is something that we also saw when this was featured on the MM stream, right? And I think I was in two minds about it, because on the one point I think the problem is also that while streaming, you're also having to manage different tasks at the same time, right? You have to answer to chat, you have to answer to suggestions, you want to keep people engaged, and at the same time you're also meant to be paying attention to the game. So it's fair to assume that these things might go wrong, but actually this is really good advice, because it's so easy to miss stuff here. And if something looks a bit awry, it actually makes sense to go check out, because there's a fair chance that there's a secret passage there, or an item, or a bit of lore. So that's great advice. What we would also like to take a look at is this here, because we already mentioned that in the beginning. This is actually what the first thing we also played when it came to this project. It's actually the demo level for the game. So I think, Craig, when you built this, was this everything that it existed, or did you already have test versions of the rest of the castle?
No, this was it. I just made this to start with. I had an idea that I wanted, you to start in a gilded cage big castle tower, which this is a sort of prototype of. The actual one's about twice the size, I think, or maybe a little bit larger. But I didn't have anything more than vague ideas about how the castle was actually going to be laid out when I made this.
See, so it starts off the same way with a... Oh, by the way, I can say this now, because this was quite the head turner during the MM stream, this animation there. To the point that you actually, I think you even posted...
How did he do that? Yeah.
You even posted a behind-the-scenes look at it on Twitter, right?
The text is a sticker projected onto a paint stroke, which then gets shorter.
And see, for anybody who might just have walked into the stream right now, you're not missing out on anything because you as we will be seeing in a minute. This test level has has the same style as the main game. It also has a lot of the content from the starting area we explored earlier, and we thought it would be fascinating to see some of the differences. Also, I still think this is a perfect little vertical slice of the entire game, and I also really love the look of this weird, isolated little castle tower here. Like it's for obvious reasons. It's a bit different in the finished game. Like the tower is still there, but it's no longer as isolated as it is here. But like I was instantly drawn into it because I love this how peculiar it looks and how it's set against the landscape.
Yeah,
and it's so great that we can return here.
Got a little extra special treatment in this one because I had the thermo to deal with it.
Yeah,
have a few more trees and clouds.
Like
and
I'm definitely feeling your pain there, but see, this is the gilded, because I love I remember cajoling you into trying to put some trees back into the finished game in the landscape.
Yeah, and there are some.
But see, it's a bedroom and it's also in the gilded cage, but you can already see that the layout is quite a bit different from before.
Having played the finished game quite often right now, it's kind of eerie being there because I recognize the elements, but nothing is in the place where I expect it to be.
Oh God, I'm getting such a disconnect from this right now. At the same time, and this is really funny, there are parts of the finished game of the Gilded Cage where I still expect stuff to be in a different place based on the demo. Like I still have this moment where I think, well, this used to be different in the demo. So we have. Again, the principle is the same, right? We get an overview of the area that's ahead of us. We also have this gate down at the bottom, and we will obviously have to pass through that. There's this really beautiful landscape off in the distance. And again, there's some ivy that we cannot climb because we have this freaking dress on. So let's take a look.
What I love about having a look back at this demo right now is, so one thing we try to navigate with the series is, at the one hand,
these guys are here as well.
You really want to show off the games and give them a great introduction in regard to what is the gameplay like, what does the game feel like. But of course, at the same time, and that's why we take a lot of time also diving into the background, diving into some of the motivation, the inspiration behind the game, also covering the creator's perspective towards these games, right? And it's great to have a creator on stream for that, and I think this is now a really nice opportunity to talk a little bit more about how this game actually came together, and maybe also about, which would be really interesting, what didn't make the cut. Because usually in a creative process, you have some ideas that you are really fond of and that you really like, but they don't make it to the final game. Maybe we can start with that one. Is there anything that you had in mind when you did the first test level or when you toyed around with your original ideas that you really liked, but that somehow didn't fit the game, that was kind of left on the cutting desk, so to speak?
Also, Quake, while are you thinking on this? Quick shout out to Agotines on the chat. Hi, welcome, and yeah, it is a gorgeous game. Thanks for dropping by.
Brilliant, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, what didn't make the cut? Well, I mean, not a lot. The Gilded Cage here is just a miniature version of the larger one. I think most of the elements made it in. I even copied the bird across. Yeah, oh well, and I was mentioning before, I sort of regret not keeping the sandstone colouring on the lower parts of the castle. I kept I made it greystone in the full game for thematic reasons, I guess, because of the coloration of the antagonist. But it does look a little more blocky and slightly less visually interesting. This is still running on the old logic of when the Gilded Cage, when the test level was first made, by the way. So if anything doesn't work properly, it's because it's still running on old logic. It probably explains why Ivy's climbing slower.
Also, the Ivy in the finished game looks quite a bit cooler.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. It might have been the lighting settings, or I tweaked it a little bit since then. I can't remember.
Oh, wait, this was different, right? This was about dropping down, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I kind of really like your answer to my question regarding elements that didn't make the cut, because the answer basically was most of it is in there. And I think this might be grounded in the fact that you, as we talked about earlier, kind of approach your projects in regard to what kind of gameplay is at the heart of it and how can I make this gameplay work. And as we are playing the test level now, that's basically it, right? So before doing the castle, before doing the entire game, there was this little piece, this little vertical slice that Stefan and I also played a lot and that we really refined. And then you went from there. I mean, it's a really interesting and great way of approaching game design. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that and what your experience with it is.
Close call. Oh God.
Yeah, it's certainly easier to put together a small thing to start with. It's sometimes frustrating for me to put together a sort of, what do they call them? Like a white box level?
Yeah.
Where it's just rough blocked out things and you just have the logic trying to work, but you don't make it look any good. So I guess having the Gothic architecture pieces helped because I could just slot those together fairly quickly and make something that was a little nicer looking. But yeah, it's basically about testing the logic, about making sure that the doors work the way they're supposed to. I had some problems earlier on because of the way it detects puppets. Sometimes if she was carrying something, it'd poke through the door and register as her being on the other side. So I had to refine. Oh, hello. We've got a sword.
See, we didn't show this off in the full game, but here we go. This is actually the sword fight mode,
which a lot of people will probably find quite stiff. It's not an action RPG in the Dark Souls sense, really, and it's also, well, as we've mentioned, Dreams is quite good for making things your own way and making games that you want, rather than mass appeal kind of thing necessarily. It does make them quite niche, but it means you can still jump with the sword.
This crazy little combat hop here. Hi, Topus Mackie in chat. Hi, welcome. And yeah, super impressive game. We're big fans.
Yeah, so you can have a strong artistic vision, which is really good, but it does tend to make some games tend to have idiosyncratic designs that maybe don't work the way people expect them to. The sword fighting in this was mainly inspired by my experience doing historical European martial arts for I think about 4 years. I didn't do much with the rapier, but the things I learned sort of, I wanted to try and make a more realistic sword fighting engine. So one of the things you don't tend to do in one-on-one sword fights is, say, thrust multiple times, do combo attacks. If you do that, you're basically opening yourself up to getting hit. So I tried to build the combat to avoid that, but it does mean that you tend to do sort of one thrust and then you have to wait a little bit.
But what I really like about it is that it has this really. I talked about this to Michael yesterday. I love that it has this really nice vintage Assassin's Creed style. You can also do stealth kills, by the way. This really nice vintage Assassin's Creed style blocking and searching for openings. And let's see, let's aggro these guys.
Please put the sword down, my lady.
It's also so nice because we can see how apologetic they are.
Oh, better watch out.
No, that wasn't
the
good.
The parrying might not be particularly smooth in this one either. There was some problems that didn't work out until later on.
I mean, the great thing is this really allows us kind of a look behind the curtain and how the project developed, and I think that's something that speaks to many people using Dream as a platform to create, to make the dreams, the ideas they have a reality. And you talked about this a little earlier, Craig, in regard to how Dreams is a tool that really helps you to prototype these things really fast, and it's really fun to then hop in and play. And maybe talking a little bit more about that. So how did you go about really setting this up? So I know in the sword fighting, for example, there is an element that you also took from the Dreamiverse, right? So maybe just for people who haven't played Dreams before or haven't used it as a platform, maybe we can talk a little bit about what makes this as a creative tool really stand out in regard to other tools you could.
Oh yeah, all right. I remember this still being way rougher than the finished game.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you don't have the good steering dress anymore either, and no little birds to stand on. What makes Dreams good for prototyping? Well, there's thousands of assets out there already that you can use. You don't have to do. I don't even know what it's called because I've never actually done 3D modeling, but you don't have to do UV unwrapping on anything. It's all just, and you don't have to do texture maps, normal maps, is that what they're called? Yeah, all of the texture on stuff like stonework and things is done with the way that Dreams handles objects, which is they're made up of tiny little flecks, which can be have various textures and what's the word? Impasto. The thickness of them.
Textures, and you can also, like, the finishes are also a huge part of it, right? You can always have something look glistening or wet or shiny or metallic.
Shiny, yeah. Yeah, and also some of I don't think there's a lot of examples in here because I wanted the place to look fairly neat and smooth, so I didn't do any roughening on the brickwork. But you can use various techniques to physically rough up the surface so that it actually has bumps and divots in it, as opposed to them being just part of a normal map you pasted onto it. So yeah, doing 3D modeling is really easy. Also, once you've sculpted something, you can just look at it. You can just stick it straight in a scene straight away. You can sculpt things in the middle of scenes and then just press play and see how they work. So there's not a huge pipeline for development of ideas and testing things. It's quite rapid.
Oh, that wasn't good.
Oh.
You're doing great, Stefan.
Also, I think what's really fascinating about it is, this is also something you touched upon earlier, Craig, is like it also allows for pipelines or for approaches to creation that probably would be deemed unprofessional in other engines.
Yes.
What I mean is, for example, like you talked about the white boxing stage, right? And that is something that I personally really suck at. Like, I always need something to look at. So even in an early version of my creations, I will want to have at least some kind of layout or design there. I don't deal well with entirely white boxed levels. So I know that this obviously does not work like that in commercial game design, and there are probably excellent reasons for it. But I love the way you're basically just able to iterate on your creations. Like, you can just set up a preliminary version of your stage, and then if you feel the need to pretty it up a bit, you can do that while you're still working on other stuff. And if you
and you can
while
just
working on it,
you can just keep building on that and polishing it until you've got the actual level you want.
Exactly, and there's no rendering time or no compilation time or something like that. At the same time, if you get frustrated because things are not working out, then you can just, inside the same engine, you can just say, well, I'll just do sound design for an hour and put some cool sound effects in and set an ambience for the place. Because, and in that way, I think,
just to take your mind off that.
I mean, again, this cannot be the way of doing it as a profession. But at the same time, I think it's fantastic that it opens up the approach to creating stuff for people who normally would have dropped off and bounced off other engines. Like, I know for a fact that I would have bounced off Unreal or even much simpler engines, like something super simple and versatile like GameMaker Studio. It's still too abstract for me in the sense that it always starts with a black screen. And I love that about Dreams, that it really allows for these different kinds of creating stuff. And also ropes in people who wouldn't normally giving any gaming engine the time of day.
Yeah, I tried using Blender once, I couldn't figure it out.
I mean, it's interesting that in a certain meta perspective, Dreams as a platform to create and Dreams as a tool has a similar approach to what Craig described as his approach to game design in regard to allowing players to really find their own way, making their own story, and having their own experience. I think the same is true for Dreams as a creation tool, because you can approach a game in Dreams by starting with a white box or by testing gameplay elements you later on implement into a bigger world. But you can also do it the completely other way around. And I think that's also a big strength of the platform, and something that, for me personally, also was a nice experience, because when my brother and I were working on our big game, Memories of the Elders, it was nice because we have these diametrically opposed kind of approaches to game design. He likes really going gameplay first, trying it out, and then really building like little boxes that don't have anything in common with the actual world, but just trying to, if stuff works. And I like to start by sculpting the world that the game will take place in, and then looking for little places, little niches, and what can happen there, what kind of gameplay would make sense here, so what can we do here. So completely different approaches, kind of inside out and outside in. And it still worked nicely to work together in Dreams because the platform allows for it, because the platform has the flexibility to cater to these different approaches, and that's something I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, and if you're new to Dreams and you are intimidated about thinking about making your own game, there's so many assets that you can just use, not just for furniture and stuff. You can grab characters and just slap levels together and make something just out of building blocks that other people have put together. So you can get quite a lot done and learn a lot about how the process works just from using other people's things. You don't have to make everything from scratch.
Would you look at this little sassy red number here?
Yeah, so you can do that. You can be really quick in prototyping stuff and taking stuff from the community, but you can also like spend half a year obsessing about one sculpt and really bringing every little detail in there and really making that as good as you can. And both is perfectly not only viable, but also it kind of has a synergy, because then you put out this kind of asset and other people might use it in their creations. And it's really a kind of common effort in co-creation, which I really love about Dreams too.
Yeah, and I also like I'm a bit of a funny contrarian that way, but I often chafe if somebody tells me that this is not the way it is done, right? It's something I chafe at. Like if somebody says that's not the way game design is done, or not that's like in the tabletop community, for example, that's not the way you play this, or that's not the kind of army you play, or that's not the way you paint your miniatures or stuff like that. I hate that. Like I hate trying to gatekeep stuff and lying to tell people where their fun can or cannot be. And so in that sense, I love this particular way of designing things because it really allows for all kinds of approaches. That doesn't mean that some approaches will not be more efficient as others. And like came in somebody like your brother who's super efficient about programming stuff, he's probably right to be efficient about that and probably right to put that first. And at the same time, I love that it also brings people into the fold who are interested in different things. And like I, for example, I think I suck a lot at actual game design. Like for me, it's always a case for building a world or telling a story over creating interesting game mechanics. I know that this will never land me a job as a game designer, and nor am I trying to make it that way. But at the same time, it's lovely that I get to act out my ideas in a different way and create in a different way. And it's still viable in this small ecosystem that is Dreams.
It's still artistic expression. Also, I just wanted to point out the small detail which I didn't pick up until the full game. If you walk back along that walkway, the bridge, you'll notice if you look down, the long skirt doesn't cast a shadow.
Yeah, because it's all paint, right?
Yeah. I ended up putting an invisible sculpt.
Right. You have a cone. You have a
area.
cone there in the finished game, right? Because this is like.
I think it's actually a semi ellipse.
Oh, right.
It's half of a stretched sphere, so that it's a little bit closer to the shape of the skirt when it's draping.
But as you can see, what I said before, like this little area here, this is basically, it already has so much of the finished version. It already has the almost all of the mechanics in place, or even all of the mechanics in place. It's also like it tells you what you can expect from the finished game. At the same time, and I wanted to point this out, in hindsight, what I found interesting was that when you first shared this with us and said we can, do you guys want to take a look? I actually expected this to go a totally different way. Like I could have imagined a version of Ivy and Thorn that wasn't in a big sprawling interconnected castle, but rather this arcadey sort of stage by stage, like having progressively more complicated castles, small location set pieces for each of the levels. And I didn't even think about you trying to make it into this huge sprawling castle. In hindsight, this was it was a much cooler idea to actually have it set in one place, but it could also have been this more arcadey experience where you're just, without any bigger story, you're just jumping from little castle to little castle until you've escaped the last one.
Even if it wasn't little castle, escape each one as you go, even if it was just get through an area, kind of like Strain, I guess, where you sort of solve a puzzle. Yeah. I had thought about doing that. I thought about it later on when, I saw how slightly the full game is maybe, as I said, loses a little bit of focus because it isn't built like that. So there are parts to it, but they're not like, it's not a super tight design that sort of funnels you down through puzzle. It's a puzzle kind of thing. And it might be interesting to do that. I was kind of thinking maybe that's what the Ivy and Thorn sequel would be, a bottom-up design where I'd design a bunch of little puzzle chambers first and then string them together. But the full castle itself was an interesting challenge to build because the different areas are connected to each other through so many different doors. I would either have to put in heaps of different doorways so that you pop out in the right place roughly, or I ended up using a coordinate system so it remembers where Ivy is, which is one reason why I had to make sure the castle was put together precisely right and always was in the same place between scenes, so that you didn't fall off the floor or something.
And as you're saying that, I'm getting this dreadful feeling in the pit of my stomach, because I know I will still have to ask you about that for my own current project, because I will have I need the character to go from scene to scene. And now hearing you speaking about that needing to be precise, I think I've gotten myself into quite a lot of hot water there. Oh my God.
Now we started with the view of the big castle of the finished game, and now we are kind of ending with a view of the little tower that started it all. And I think that's a nice circle that's closing here. So, but before we end, I think, Craig, is there anything that we didn't touch upon that you still want to say? Anything that is important for you to bring across in regard to the game or your process, or anything you would like to add?
I should, but I can't think of anything without spoiling the story or the puzzles or anything. But I'm just happy that at this stage of Dreams' life, people are finding it and playing it and enjoying it. And I'm getting nice reviews and people who are being really engaged with the game and really enjoying it, which is always good to see.
I wanted to quickly, because I forgot earlier on the actual title screen of the full game, that is some kick-ass logo design right there. Like, this is such a fantastic logo for the game. It's actually sculpted, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a sculpt. You can find the font online in the Dreamiverse. It's called Thorn Blackletter.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
that's cool.
I've released that as a public asset as well, so people can use it. It's made up of lots of little bits of the elements of the letters, so it's probably not very thermo-friendly if you're using a lot of it, but it's okay for little titles and stuff.
Also, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say it took a lot of iterations to get the text. The font the way I wanted it, but in particular I wanted to design the ampersand to look more like the Latin et character, so that you can tell
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Like this is something that some font types will actually have, right? Like, but it's really, if you want it in there and you want it as part of your custom logo, it really makes sense to have it there. And it really, I think it comes together so beautifully. One thing I wanted to point out though, before we wrap it up, the first thing I wanted to say is that I talked about this earlier. Look, I put this into the collection for you. These are all these super beautiful building blocks. VectorSlinger put together for the castle, but they can also be yours for your own castle. Also, taking a look at these actually made me realize how thriftily they are being used in the actual game. Like this piece here, for example, right? You're getting such a lot of uses out of that. Like it can be the base for a column.
It does.
But it also can be all kinds of weird magic-y architecture if you put the pointy parts up, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look too bad sticking out of the ceiling as well. But if you go down the other end, you'll see there's a fused column with the base attached as well.
Yeah, like this, right?
To save on thermo, because that's such a basic element of the architecture. I had to save on thermo. I was having too many things by having a separate base and a pillar as two separate objects for the entire, outside of the keep and everything else. So, and also that window there is fused together, or I've just sort of made it into
one
yeah.
sculpt, right?
I've re-sculpted that from I can't remember which bit I started with, but I basically sculpted that. I think I started with the arch because it's the hardest part, and just put the stone tracery in there and built the wall around it so that actually I think the wall might be a
I mean, this one is actually, for me, this one is obviously the biggest showstopper because it's like I can only imagine the pain of having to put that together. But then this is coming
the kaleidoscope
from using the kaleidoscope tool.
Look, this is super embarrassing for me. But this coming from somebody who I dare I even say it, who has only discovered fairly recently what this kaleidoscope tool actually works like for sculpting. This is really embarrassing and really bad.
It can be a bit tricky if you don't. You got to start the sculpt off with this kaleidoscope tool in mind, or you're going to be in all sorts of trouble.
I remember talking to Saku's Mind last year, who's a fantastic sculptor and designer in Dreams, and I remember telling him that almost all of the architecture I've ever done in Dreams was entirely done without the kaleidoscope and without, sometimes even without the grid, and he couldn't believe it. And I cannot believe it. It's really stupid. It's a stupid way to go about things.
But it is part of the strength of Dreams that you don't need to be mathematically precise, and you can make stuff that is a little more organic.
I think I have yet to make anything in Dreams that is perfectly straight. I think I have not yet managed that. One last
Some
thing.
people try to achieve that with other tools that don't allow for this kind of leeway.
But exactly.
How can I make it not look like it was originating from a drawing board and imported here? How can I make it more organic, right?
This is so fun, right? I think half a year ago or something, there were all these social media posts about one of the big sculpting engines. It might have been Substance Model, or it might have been something else. It might have been Blender. Allowing for these flaky types of finishes or of these things that and like some of us from the Dreams community jumped into those comment sections and said, well, yeah, this is just what it looks like out of the box in Dreams. And Dreamers have been trying to get rid of that look forever. Like they've tried to make things look mathematically precise and straight. So yeah, this is such a weird and fun way that the two spheres basically intersect. One thing I wanted to show, because this is so fun, I think, because this makes a great connection back to our previous episode, which dealt with the fantastic Dreamscom 23 creation by the Dreamscom team. But it also shows how committed Craig is to the bit, because he also submitted, back in the day, a booth for Dreamscom. So this is Hall 4, I think, from last year's Dreamscom. And
I forgot one of my main inspirations, actually, that kind of inspired me to make Ivy and Thorn as a giant castle was Castle Stormvale from Elden Ring.
Oh, right.
Because there's just so many secrets and little bits and corners in that I was kind of like, I want to make something that's like that. sprawling and difficult to get around.
And look, so we have this super nice, and it's very Gilded Cage, of course, because it uses the same building blocks, and you get this very nice booth here. But like what I meant when I said you were committed to the bit was not only that you used this to advertise Ivy and Thorn, but that you are totally unafraid of people not actually discovering what the secret behind this is, because of course you can just go in here and explore just as you would in the actual game, and you can actually open the place up. And like,
I wanted to attract players that were interested in finding secrets.
Oh, so it's a bit of a litmus test for acquiring the right types of players, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't find that room, you won't be interested in the game in the first place. So
that's
you
interesting.
are my
audience. Just be like, oh, that looks nice. I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting though, because like once again, why doesn't this open? Oh yeah, no. This is so interesting because
it's a bit dark in here.
I remember, like for years on end, I remember optimizing my own Dreamscom booths, and I always wanted people to find everything, and I never got it quite right. Like there was always something that people who streamed it didn't find, and I always put the trigger zones in slightly wrong places and stuff like that, and I was always frustrated by it. And I think like being able to be okay with people not finding stuff and being content with stuff just being discovered by those willing to put in the work to discover it, that is a fearlessness that I think I will want to aspire to in the future, because that's really cool. Like it's a way of self-contentment that I have yet to reach, I think.
Well, we've mentioned Dark Souls and FromSoft games a few times, and yeah, they're not my only influence, but I do appreciate their willingness to make large swathes of content that people might completely miss. I like the indifference.
I mean, I think it's a certain, like it's, you talked about emergent gaming, right? And about like living through your version of the story and the version you tell with that game. And I think like this is a great match, because actually it's whatever's there to discover, it's yours to discover or to discard or to leave by the wayside. So it's a way of offering choice to people. And I can say it's something I struggle with, because I'm often more interested in actually getting my point across. But I think it's a fantastic and effective and brave way of telling stories and of creating interactive experiences.
Definitely.
But yeah, so with this nice little view of an even smaller slice of Ivy and Thorn, I think this is a good way of wrapping this up. So again, this collection has been published for everybody to peruse on the Dreamiverse. Please do check out Ivy and Thorn. It is a fantastic game, and at 253 thumbs up, it deserves a lot more attention. If you are into sprawling castles, if you are into exploring, if you are into lore and backstory and sneaking away from robot soldiers wearing silly Landsknecht uniforms, then this is definitely your game, and you should definitely check it out on the Dreamiverse. And
they were inspired by the Swiss Guard.
By the Swiss Guard, right. But yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Craig, for coming along and for being here with the stream. And this was
really
just
great.
I'd just like to also thank you for having me, and I'd also like to thank my wife for voicing Ivy in the final cutscene. She's asleep now, but we'll be watching this on.
But she's actually like, we know this, and we can, without spoiling anything, we can tell the viewers that she's doing a heck of a performance. Like it's really, like it was so
Definitely,
cool after having played through it and having spent so much time with Ivy. It was so cool actually hearing her voice lines, and it was really it's a great way of ending. It's one great way of ending the game, I should say. So with that, do check out this collection, do check out these games. To everybody who's joined us for today, thank you so much for watching. And to those of you who will watch this later on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. We've been asleep for a while, but I think we'll be back at some point. We still have some subjects we would like to talk about. We are also still beavering away at our own Dreams project, so please keep those awesome dreams coming, keep putting up amazing stuff, and keep playing other people's stuff, because I think there's so much inside Dreams that deserves to be seen and that deserves to be played, and we'll be doing our best to keep shining a light on that. And with that, I think thank you. Have a great weekend. Have a great time in Dreams, creating in Dreams or somewhere else, and see you again next time for another deep dive. Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.